limits will be enforced out of respect for all candidates. Questions will be provided by the audience. Each question will be answered by all candidates, so please ask questions that pertain to all as opposed to individual candidates. League members have index cards. For this forum, they are orange. You can receive one of these if you have a question. Please write it down, make sure it gets to the aisle, and we will have volunteers that will run and pick them up. Questions will be reviewed for clarity, appropriateness, and to avoid duplication. And just so that you're aware, some questions may be received that are duplicates, and the League will do its best effort to make these questions into singular units so that they can be asked. So if you don't hear your question exactly as you phrased it, it's because it's been through the League review process. Candidates have been asked not to interrupt each other. The moderator will repeat a question if asked. Audience, here's the work that we need from you. Please turn off all of your electronic devices. Please hold your applause and do not demonstrate in any way to show either support or non-support of any candidate. There is space in the lobby for candidates to speak to supporters after the forum, and they will have campaign literature available on tables in the lobby. No campaign signs will be posted. We ask that the candidates and audience members be respectful to each other and to all attendees. And I am now pleased to once again introduce our moderator for today, Mr. Tamon Bradley, WGN television political reporter and news anchor. Thank you, Tamon.
Thank you once again, Mary Beth. Good to be here with you all. You got me out of doing the 5 o'clock news, sir. Yeah. Bears Dolphins tied at 28 in the fourth. 41 seconds left. All right. No more updates during the course of this. All right, so our third forum today, House District 53, Eddie Corrigan and Mark Waller. We'll start with 2-minute introductions by draw. Eddie Corrigan won, and we'll go first. 2 minutes introduction.
First off, I want to thank the League of Women Voters for hosting this today. I think it's an important aspect of democracy. I want to thank the moderator for being here as well, and most importantly, I'd like to thank all of you guys for showing up here today. My name is Eddie Corrigan, as stated before. I'm running for state representative in this race because I've seen far too many of my family, my friends, my neighbors have to move out of this great state. I come from a big Irish family. You can see the shamrocks on my literature. You can see the shamrocks on my signs. One of 46 first cousins. I've seen a third of those cousins have to leave this state for better opportunities and better jobs elsewhere. These are entrepreneurs. These are small business owners. These are job creators. These are the revenue streams that Illinois desperately needs. These are the people that Illinois desperately needs. I think it's time that we bring a little bit of youth, a little bit of energy, and a shakeup to what we've seen in Springfield for the past 35 years. I think for far too long we've seen politicians speak out of both sides of their mouths. They want to talk about taxes, they want to talk about taxpayers, they want to talk about small businesses. They like going door to door, they like going on the tours, putting on the hard hats, cutting the ribbons, but when it actually comes to doing something for our job creators and for our small businesses, they've come woefully short. I think it's time that we introduce a little bit of property tax relief. I think that we look at ethical government, and I think that we look at redistricting reform to bring about more moderate districts that bring about people together looking for solutions for our communities and that bring about our community's values. Once again, I appreciate all of you guys being here today, and I look forward to the debate.
All right, Mark Walker, 2 minutes introduction, please.
Yes, I'm Mark Walker. I'm a 35-year resident of Arlington Heights. I really am running because I want people to be proud of Illinois again. I'm sick and tired of years now of politicians bad-mouthing Illinois in order that they appear to be the saviors of Illinois. Illinois is a very strong state in many ways. We're the leader in many ways. We're a leader in high-tech startups. We're a leader in returns from startups. We're a leader in producing high-tech graduate degrees. We're a leader in distribution. We're a leader in innovation. We are one of the great innovators in the country when you look at the actual numbers. There are so many strengths in Illinois, we should build on those strengths. So I want people to be proud of Illinois. I am running because I want to get up feeling proud rather than feeling some kind of despair or anxiety. I want to believe in government again. I want people to feel like the people in this room feel, who believe they're here or you're here because we believe there might be solutions. We believe government can work. We believe that these problems, although they're clear problems that we have in the state, can be solved. And I want to thank the League of Women Voters for that. I also want to thank the library. The library is a model of how a government organization can help all kinds of people do all kinds of things and be open to all. That's the model that we need in government. And finally, I want people to understand that despite all the problems we have in this state, they are fixable. It'll take discipline, it'll take someone with knowledge, it'll take someone with experience leading organizations and budgeting, and it'll take someone who can actually fix it working with others. Thanks.
All right, let's move on to questions. Audience, if you have questions this time, we are using orange. Please write them down and pass them to the aisle for collection by league volunteers. I'll start with a few of my own. Candidates, remember that you have 1 minute. Mr. Walker, we will start with you. When you were in the legislature back in 2011, you voted for an income tax hike. The state has a massive bill backlog and unfunded pension liabilities. Will you vote again to raise taxes to balance the budget?
What I propose and would vote for is a graduated income tax structure in the state of Illinois. We are upside down in the state. We have way too high property taxes, the top property taxes in the country. And we have a state government that doesn't fully fund education locally, causing those property taxes to be rising. We can restructure the income tax in the state such that 90% of the people pay less taxes and still produce enough revenue so that we can fund the long-term debt, pay down the accounts payable, and actually produce more for local school districts such that they don't have to raise our property taxes. I'm a taxpayer too. I want the tax system to work for the good of everyone in the state. And the key to me is a graduated income tax.
Mr. Corrigan, 1 minute. Would you vote, are there any taxes that you would vote for to shore up our finances?
I'd like to address the graduated income tax first. I am not in favor of a graduated income tax whatsoever. I do not believe that will help relieve the tax burden in the state. I think when you look at states like Wisconsin, you look at states like Minnesota, it has not helped working class individuals in those states. If you look at the only time that there's been brackets put out was 2 years ago by Representative Martwig. In those brackets, any family making over $17,000 would see an increase in their tax rate. If you look at working class families making $50,000, their tax rate would be moved to 6.27%. That is not helping working class families. The graduated income tax will not help working class families. So I don't believe that that is the best way in which we can solve the budget crisis and the revenue crisis that we're in right now.
All right, Mr. Corrigan, 1 minute. Same topic, pretty much. Governor Rauner has pushed hard for a property tax freeze and to allow voters to choose whether to raise or lower their property taxes by referendum. What do you think of that proposal? And what are your specific policy ideas to lower property taxes? 1 minute.
So I think when you look at property taxes, this is the #1 issue affecting the state. From 2011 to 2016, we saw 101,000 people leave this state. In the past 5 years, we've seen 290,000 people leave Cook County. That's a net. So the property taxes are the #1 issue we need to look at. I think that we do need a freeze. I think that the referendum that the moderator is speaking about comes from the school funding bill, which can only be accessed when schools' adequacy ratings are above 110%. So the school adequacy rating is at 90%. That's where they're looking for every school to be effectively at. So at $110,000, that school is at 20% above its adequacy rating. If you're at that level, if you're at 115,000, you should have the ability to call a referendum to lower your property taxes only to the threshold of $110,000, which is 20% above the adequacy rating.
Mr. Walker, what meant a property tax freeze and raising and lowering property taxes by ballot measure?
The first thing to remember is that property taxes are in fact set locally. If we're engaged with our libraries, our park districts, our school districts, that is the first place to go to address the property tax issue. The state has a part to play. If the state can produce enough revenue such that we can fund schools appropriately following the new funding bill, but with more funds, then the school districts don't have to raise the property taxes. If we get that kind of relief at the state level, then we can apply limits to how much a local school district could raise your property tax, and they'll have the ability to lower it as they wish. There have been a lot of bills in front of the state that were to freeze property taxes. None of them passed. Most of them were shams. I once told a group like this, how can you tell whether the state level candidate is lying when they say they're going to lower your property tax? In fact, the state has to produce the revenue to support the local school districts.
Mr. Corrigan would like to use one of his rebuttals. Please, 30 seconds.
Sure, but there are ways in which we can do things about our local property taxes at a state level. Meaningful property tax relief can be done through economic revenue. We need more revenue in the state. With that revenue, we can use that to fund our schools, like Mark said. We can also look at pension reform. Pension reform at a state level, if we move new state employees into a hybrid 401k style system, can save thousands upon millions of dollars at the state and local level. So there's definitely ways in which we can save, at the state level, including requiring frequent assessments of property taxes.
Okay. Anything on that, Mr. Walker?
Well, we just got a mix of all kinds of things, including stating nominal tax rates instead of effective tax rates, which mislead. I would just say that we will attack this issue.
Okay. All right. Let's just broaden it out a bit, but still talking economics and finance. In 2017, the legislature passed a tax credit scholarship program. Corporations and individuals can make contributions for private school scholarships and then get a 75% state tax credit. Is that a good program, Mr. Walker? 1 minute.
I believe in personal liberty, and therefore I think parents should be able to make the choice of where their children go to school. On the other hand, I believe public education is a fundamental of America. Public education almost defines America. It was formed in our pre-revolutionary times. We need to support public education. Anything that detracts from public education, to me, is simply un-American. We need an educated populace to elect the right candidates. We need an educated workforce in order to help our businesses. We need to support education. And therefore, I would say that anything that detracts from supporting public education is the wrong public policy.
Mr. Corrigan.
I believe in the tax credit scholarship program. I think it was a great thing added to the school funding bill. It was done at a bipartisan level, which we don't necessarily see all the time. I think that's an important distinction right there. I think allowing low and working class families to be able to choose the school of their choice is important in this country. And I think that allowing students to receive the best education possible that they can receive is important. Those individuals that come from those areas, we've seen them give back to those communities with great educations. So I believe that school choice is an important aspect of the new school funding bill, and I'm in support of it.
All right, let's move on. Gentlemen, last month, a panel of Democratic women formed to make recommendations following the recent harassment allegations at the Capitol wrote that both parties should work harder to elect more women to overcome an old boys club culture in state politics. Gentlemen, what have you done to stand up to the old boys club culture that exists everywhere? Starting with you, Mr. Corrigan.
So I think in my young career that I have seen, I've seen a lot of great things happen with women. As someone who came from a single family, my mother died when I was 9 years old. I was raised by my aunts, by my grandmother, and by my older sister. I believe that it is vastly important that we continue to have equal rights for women. Women should not feel any type of harassment or misconduct in the workplace. And when I am down in Springfield, I will ensure that people understand that it is not okay and it is not an environment that should be, this old boys club, this fraternity style situation that we see in Springfield right now. What I've done at my job is just make the women in my office feel comfortable, the women that I'm friends with feel safe, and that I'll continue to do that when I'm down in Springfield.
Mr. Walker?
I've been fighting for women's rights since the 70s. As one of the original members of NOW, I organized consciousness raising, I organized marches. The first political label I ever took on and really believed in for myself was feminist. It wasn't Democrat or Republican. I created jobs and created opportunities for people in the business world when I was a corporate manager. And in fact, I once had an event where 35 senior managers of American companies got together to thank me for helping start their career. I believe that everyone in this room should read that report that was written by 3 Democratic legislators in Springfield. All of their recommendations are good recommendations. I could go on and tell you the stories about how, in fact, Springfield is a toxic place for women. In many ways, it is an old boys network. It has to be stopped. And it's stopped by leadership, and it's stopped by putting women more in charge. That's why I like women candidates.
All right, 1 minute on this one. We'll begin with Mr. Walker this time. Governor Rauner vetoed the Gun Dealer Licensing Act. The measure would require gun shops obtain a license and have it renewed every 5 years. It would also require in-store videotaping and employee training on identifying straw purchases. Is that a good bill, yes or no?
Yes. Do I get 2 minutes?
You get 1 minute.
It's a very good bill. In fact, what we found was that 40% of the confiscated guns for violent crimes in some of the violent neighborhoods of Chicago came from gun shops and straw purchases in Illinois, some in the suburbs. If we can have licenses for nail salons and hairdressers, we can do it for gun shops. These are very straightforward, very simple, almost no-brainer requirements. More importantly, I'm a veteran. I understand guns. I carried what is effectively an AR-15 in combat. It is designed to destroy as many people as possible and make it actually hard to do surgery on them to save them. When I left Vietnam, I put down a military-style assault weapon, and I would never pick one up. I don't think they belong in civil society.
Mr. Corrigan, 1 minute.
I think this is a bill that I would have voted for if I was down in Springfield. I've always said from the very beginning when I've run this campaign that I am a proud supporter of the Second Amendment, but I also am a proud person that believes in common sense. And I've been portrayed as someone who wants the Wild West to take place in mail pieces. I've come out and I've said from the very beginning, I believe in universal background checks, I believe in a 72-hour wait period, and I believe in not allowing bump stocks. So, no, I mean, I think that there are ways that we can look at this, the problem that we're having, our safety problem that we're having in our local communities, and we can make bipartisan decisions to make our communities safer. I am a proud supporter of the Second Amendment, but I also believe in common sense legislation on an individual basis.
All right, Mr. Corrigan, we'll start with you this time. Should the state take steps, and these are audience questions now, should the state take steps to implement or offset actions by the current administration in Washington on issues such as tax law changes, the Affordable Care Act, and immigration? Basically, should the state counter things, laws being passed out of Washington, actions, administrative directives coming from the Trump administration, tax law changes, Affordable Care Act, and immigration?
Sure. I think that we go down a dangerous road when the state tries to supersede or effectively not listen to federal law. I think that there are ways in which we can go about to change those federal laws like we're doing right now. We're here listening to 2 candidates, deciding which candidate we want to send to Springfield. We can do the same thing at the federal level. We understand that all elections have consequences here. And if people want to see things changed in Washington, D.C., I implore them to vote for a candidate that they believe will make different decisions. On individual aspects of immigration, the Affordable Care Act, tax law, I'd have to have more time to speak on all of those individually. What I can say is this country is a country of immigrants, and I am a proud supporter of legal immigration. I think that we should welcome immigrants into our community, and I think that if we're looking at laws at the federal level, the ways in which we can enact change is by voting different leaders into office.
Mr. Walker, 1 minute.
Well, it's interesting. I don't think we can play it both ways. We can't say it on the one hand that we represent the people of Illinois and the citizens of Illinois and the needs of Illinois, and at the same time say, oh, you have to follow the federal law. Because those same people are saying, but I believe in federalism, so let's give the responsibility back to the states. You can't do both. On some of the issues, I am a very strong supporter of covering pre-existing conditions. And at the federal level, there have been options offered and pushed that remove pre-existing conditions. I'm a very strong proponent of, in Illinois, requiring health insurance companies to not have limits to lifetime benefits. And we can do that and should do it. In fact, those are lifesavers, not life killers. So in the areas where we can help the citizens of Illinois by resisting what happens in Washington, we absolutely ought to do that.
Let's start with Mr. Walker this time. If elected, how will you communicate with your constituents and address their needs and concerns?
Yeah, that's interesting because I was a state rep 2009 to 2011, and I walked all the time talking to constituents from both sides. I also had multiple town hall meetings. Every time I had a free weekend, I would have a town hall. It stuns me, the environment where we have some Congress people just afraid to have town halls. Amazing. I mean, let's look at Brad Schneider. He has a town hall every weekend. He has a coffee almost every Sunday. And yet we have members of Congress who haven't had real open town hall meetings in 20 years. That's something I would do. I would just stay in touch with everyone. I also was fairly noted for calling back virtually everyone who wrote me, because I like talking to people. I like to hear what they say. I especially like talking to people who disagree with me, as some people who I recognize in the audience know. I think it's really challenging and fun, and it's part of the good thing about being a politician is to talk to your opponents.
Mr. Corrigan, 1 minute.
I worked in Washington, D.C. for a little bit, and one of the reasons why I moved back is because I wanted to be closer to my community. I wanted to work in my community. And I see it as a special thing to be a state representative and to represent those individuals in your community. I will absolutely hold town halls in which people can ask me questions, and I can answer any questions that they may have. My door will always be open for meetings in which individual or group constituents want to come in and have a conversation with me, whether they agree or disagree with what I have to say. I will always be a listening ear. I don't claim to know everything. And if there are constituents out there that know issues, that know specific details that are going on with their business, with their health care, that can help me down in Springfield, I will always be a listening ear for each and every individual in my community. I think it's a basic aspect of representing a community is listening and engaging with your constituents.
We're going to hold you both to it. Let's start with you this time, Mr. Corrigan. 1 minute. How will you support the accelerated deployment of renewable energy and ensure we modernize our electricity grid to better accommodate this clean energy transition? And of course, if you don't support any of that, just talk about it.
No, I really liked what the General Assembly did with the Future Energy and Jobs Act. This was something that utilized green energy, it utilized renewable resources, and it brought about the creation of jobs. That is exactly what you want to see at the state level. You want to see the ability for people to kind of get together. It was a bipartisan bill on both sides. And grow jobs while helping us get off of, our fossil fuel reliance. And as someone who kind of grew up in the green generation, I understand the importance of taking care of our planet and taking care of our community. I will always be listening and finding out what the best methods are to bring about the best regulations for our business that don't hamper them, but also take care of our planet.
Mr. Walker.
There's no doubt that green energy is our future, and it's good to hear you say some of those things, Eddie. That act created 119,000 new jobs in Illinois. It's one of the only things we did that actually created tens of thousands of new jobs. We can have 25% of our energy clean energy by 2025. That's the goal of the act. And by clean energy, I mean mostly solar and some wind. We have to move beyond coal, oil, and nuclear to get there, but we can get there. It is the future. For people that resist the future, which unfortunately is a lot, I'm going to be partisan of the Republicans in this state, we just have to get past that, and I hope we can all work together on that.
All right, beginning with you, Mr. Walker, 1 minute. What is your position on ensuring quality health care to all of our citizens regardless of race, gender, income, or health status?
We should do it. We should protect the protections that were established some years ago now on pre-existing conditions, on accessibility, on the ability to get low-cost health care for all. In fact, you'll notice that the purchase price of the new Obamacare programs is actually low now this year, despite all the efforts to make it artificially higher than it used to be. Access should be wider. I am looking at it, but I am in concept, I'm in favor of a more universal option, such as Medicare for all, with the ability of people to buy different programs if they want to. But it should be available to everyone. We cannot be a country that is in the top 20 countries in every measure except healthcare. It's absolutely ridiculous. We have to get past it.
Mr. Corrigan, 1 minute.
Yeah, I think that it's a question, like Mark said, I'm in favor of it. I want insurance to be as cost effective as possible and to cover as much as that person needs. I believe that we should be able to insure people that have a pre-existing condition. I think that it's our moral obligation to make sure that those people are covered in insurance plans. I think that when we're looking at cost-effective ways to provide health care, I think when we look at managed care facilities, I think it's one of the things the governor has done a great job of. It's low cost, it provides preventative care for people, and it allows people to not enter into the emergency room, which is one of the most expensive things that the state can have, and use them as their primary care physician. So I think if you look at MCOs, I think when you look at private insurance, if we can make it more competitive, open up the state lines to people, allow them to actually like their doctor to keep it, who like their health care plan to keep it. I think these are important things, and I think these are things that provide quality health care for individuals.
I'd like to rebut that a little bit.
Yes, please, 1 minute. Or I'm sorry, 30
Yeah,
seconds.
that's fine. One of the things that I've heard very often lately is that somehow we're going to open up the healthcare market to competition by going across state lines. That is an invention. I worked with major healthcare providers as a corporate strategy consultant when they decided to pull out of states. There's no reason that they're not here except they don't want to follow local regulations. So if you want to buy a program that does not follow local regulations and protection, then you can go out of state. If you want a program that has not built a network of providers, you can buy out of state. It just is ludicrous.
I'll let it have a little time there. Did you want 30 seconds, Mr. Corrigan, or we can move on?
No, you can move on.
Okay. All right. This goes to you, 1 minute, Mr. Corrigan. Do you support changing the redistricting process to create an independent commission to draw legislative and congressional maps?
100%. For far too long, we have seen the politicians choose who their constituents will be rather than their constituents choosing who their representative will be. These maps have been nothing more than partisan gerrymandering, and that goes for every single state. I'm not just talking about here in Illinois running as a Republican. I'm talking about Texas. I'm talking about Ohio. states that are specifically gerrymandered, which is against the Constitution. An individual, an independent group deciding the districts will allow more moderate independent districts and will allow more independent candidates. People are begging for their representative to work bipartisanly. When I go door to door, you hear every single time, I want to see you work with the Democrat. I want to see something good come out of that. The way in which we can do that to get more independent-minded candidates and to see them win is to have more independent-minded districts.
Mr. Walker, 1 minute.
I've been pushing for neutral maps for at least 15 years. I really believe that it's one of the things, and I agree with Eddie here, that causes people to distrust their government and lose faith. So we should get past it. But there are two ways to go. And unfortunately, the Supreme Court dropped the ball on it. They had two cases that would have established for us what is too partisan a remapping process. Two different mathematical formulas that could be applied, and they bailed on both of them. They didn't hear either case. If we could have a national standard on what is too bad for remapping, then we could work and actually fix it nationally, and that's what we should do. Locally, I'm for a neutral board that remaps.
All right, Mr. Walker, 1 minute. We'll start with you. Illinois' preschool program reaches 26% of 4-year-olds. If elected, will you introduce universal preschool for all 3- and 4-year-olds in Illinois?
Well, that's an interesting label. I would introduce funding for preschool programs. Would I make it mandatory? Of course not. That's up to the parent to participate. But yes, it should be available universally around Illinois. We should support preschool. I'm a great fan of all the studies and the organizations that have shown that when people get on board and get to learn when they're 3, 4, 5, 6 years old, that determines their success for the entire rest of their education and many times in life. So yes, universal availability. Would I make it something that people are required to do? I'm not sure about that.
Mr. Corrigan, 1 minute. Universal preschool?
Yeah, I have to agree with Mark and when he says, when you're looking at young individuals getting involved in education and seeing their success rate, blossom from there. I'm someone who did go to preschool at age 3 and 4, and I still remember my teachers, I still remember their names, and they were incredibly helpful to me in advancing in my education. I really truly believe that I got into Notre Dame, I did well in high school and middle school because of the young education that I received. I would not mandate that by law to make parents, send their kids to receive preschool education. I think that if people are able to do it in their own homes and educate their children at 3 and 4 in their own homes, I don't see a problem with that. We've seen homeschool individuals do great things in this state, in the country, and so I wouldn't be in favor of mandating it.
Listening to you both, you seem reasonable and not necessarily ideological or partisan. So just something that's crossed my mind. We'll start with you, Mr. Corrigan. 1 minute. Why are you a Republican?
That's a great question. From some of the shaking of the head out there, I wonder why I wasn't a Democrat. No, I'm a Republican because I truly believe in individual liberty. I believe in low taxes, and I believe in limited government. I think that's what our country was founded on. I think when we succeed, those are the principles that we utilize. I'm a Republican because I really truly believe that our business owners succeed under those requirements. I believe in I'm trying to think. That's such an interesting question to put me on the spot. I just keep coming back to those 3 tenets: individual liberty, limited government, low taxes. If you believe in those things, I have a place for you in my party. I am not an ideologue. I'm not someone that doesn't want, different members of our society that maybe feel like that they don't have a place in the Republican Party. You have a place in my Republican Party. I believe in that.
Okay, all right. Mr. Walker, why are you a Democrat?
I believe that we can get together as communities, just like people in this room, and decide what is best for all of us, what is best for all children, what is best for all participants and residents in our society. Not just us, not just our family. There's, of course, a value in individual liberty. How about the liberty to grow as a group? How about the liberty to have a healthy community? How about the liberty to have air to breathe and water to drink and a sewer system that works and public health? All these things are built by government. I believe government can work for the good of communities and individuals simultaneously. And because I believe in that, I think we establish very high standards for government, and we establish that we believe in the things they can do, and they require them to do it. That's really why I'm a Democrat. And let me add, Democrats have always fought for civil liberties and civil rights, especially for groups that have been under attack. And that keeps me from moving.
All right, Mr. Walker, we'll start with you. 1 minute. Apparently, someone was not satisfied with our conversation about health care. Do you support funding for Planned Parenthood and other women's health providers?
Wow, what a great question. Planned Parenthood is the go-to public health service across the state for poor women. 300,000 women get regular pap smears and reproductive health screenings. Almost 300,000 people get cancer screenings, breast and reproductive health screenings. They provide counseling, they provide birth control. They help people take and keep control of their lives. It is absolutely clear that we have to continue to support those areas. I might add that 9 of the 16 Planned Parenthood entities in the state are designated as key healthcare providers because there are not enough primary physicians in their communities. It's easy to say I don't like them because of one thing they do. They do a whole range of things, and in fact, they're the only place to go for a lot of people.
So that's yes to Planned Parenthood?
Oh, yeah.
Okay. Mr. Corrigan.
So this is first and foremost, this is a federal issue. We've seen it in the federal budget many times. It's been passed many times before. I am pro-life. I do not believe in taxpayer funding for abortions. I believe in providing women with life-saving cancer screenings. I believe in providing, rape kits. I think the other one was providing battered women's shelters that I've seen from some of the mailers out there. So if the question goes back to that, I'm absolutely in favor of providing managed care facilities that provide preventative health care and cancer screenings for women. So if the question is that I'll continue to fund managed care facilities that provide those health care screenings for women, I'll absolutely continue to. I will not be in favor of taxpayer funding for abortion.
1 minute, Mr. Corrigan. Do you support the legalization of recreational marijuana?
So I would have to see an individual bill on legalization of recreational marijuana. If we're just using it as a tool to, get more tax revenue, then I think we run into some issues there. I am absolutely in favor of medicinal marijuana being legalized here in Illinois. I spoke with a constituent probably about 2 weeks ago. I'm not going to name his name. He talked about his wife who was suffering from cancer. Her cancer had metastasized. It was terrible. She was going through a very, very rough time. Her husband flew her out to Oregon, where her son lived, where she received, medicinal marijuana, receiving treatment for that. She had effects like we have never seen before. Her husband, she was given a 6-month sentence to live. She's still alive 2.5 years later. I think this is something that we need to look at. I think that we need to look at medical marijuana for the opioid crisis as well. We have a crisis on our hands. I believe that we can use that as a pain reliever when dealing with treatments.
Okay, Mr. Walker, 1 minute.
The answer to your question is yes. We only need to look at our history to see how well prohibition worked with alcohol. To criminalize and prohibit recreational use of marijuana is really bad public policy for many reasons. It creates a criminal class. It creates criminal enterprise. It puts people in jail for doing things that are not actually harmful to others. There are a whole set of reasons why it's just about time that we allow recreational marijuana. It goes way beyond any fiscal or financial issues. We should have learned with prohibition in this country.
Mr. Walker, 1 minute. How much money have you raised and where is it coming from?
Well, that's a good question. I don't know exactly. I've raised, how much, the better question is how much have I spent, if you don't mind. Because a lot of what I get is in-kind contributions where people do things on my behalf and I report them. When you add that to the money I've raised, it's now over $500,000. It is from various sources. It is from the Democratic Party of Illinois, part of which, I'll be open, is funded by traditional sources, unions, etc., part funded by Mr. Pritzker, part in the control of Madigan, part not. It is what everyone does. It's exactly the same kind of funding that Mr. Corrigan gets, because we track each other, and it's about the same level. So that's the reality of today's political world.
Mr. Corrigan.
Yeah, my answer is going to be very similar to Mark's. I'm not going to give you chapter on verse on how much I've raised, but it's been large in part from the House Republican organization, from the leader of the party, Jim Durkin, just as Mark has received his from the leader of his party, Mike Madigan. It's been from small businesses, large businesses, individuals at fundraisers. And like Mark said, that's just kind of how it works right now. We're in a political cycle in which we have a multi-billionaire and a multi-millionaire running against each other. And so state rep races, in my opinion, have gotten out of hand. The money has gotten out of hand at the state level. When you look at state rep, state senate, these races are just so expensive. The money could be utilized in so many other places. So in my opinion, it's too much money, whatever it is. But it's similar to Mark's in terms of Republican and Democrat organizations.
So, Mr. Corrigan, 1 minute, we'll start with you. What sort of campaign finance reform would you support?
That's an interesting question, and I'd have to look at it specifically. But I'm not going to lie, I have been a fan for very many years of the United Kingdom style of running for election. I believe they have about 6 weeks to run for election, and they're given a limited amount of funding that they're able to spend. I think this brings an equal playing field for people. I think it makes it better for individuals. It allows more people to have their voices heard. But again, I don't know specifics, but I've always been an admirer of their system, and I like evening the playing field so that individual donations don't get lost in the wayside by large groups or corporations.
Mr. Walker.
That's a tough question because I actually supported a lot of bills for campaign finance reform before they passed Citizens United through the Supreme Court, which said that money is speech and therefore corporations have the right to speech just like individuals do. That is, to my way of thinking, nonsense, but it is the law right now, and it blew up the campaign finance world. I am for limits to individual contributions. I am for completely open disclosure. You can't hide behind being a charity to give money and therefore not report who gave you the money to give to a campaign. We're just rife with these organizations that give millions of dollars and we don't know where the money came from because they pretend to be charities. That should be outlawed by regulation with the IRS. I like the English system too. It would make all our lives a lot easier and we'd have less anxiety and everybody would be much happier. But I also believe that we should raise the amount of money that you can get through public funding.
We have time for one more. Starting with you, Mr. Walker, what would you do to support a vibrant economy in our area?
Well, man, you got great questions. Oh, whoever's question that is. I'm a great fan of small business, which I'm going to set this up for Eddie because he is too. I founded 2 companies. I also was a major player in some international markets. I ran an international division of the biggest bank in the world. I understand that entrepreneurs, innovation, and small companies create jobs. So I think One of the reasons I greatly support a graduated income tax is it gets the benefits to the lower end of the economic scale, both businesses and individuals, rather than the top end, because the top end doesn't create jobs. It tends to get benefits. It pays money to the investors. It tends to invest in technology and cut jobs. It's the entrepreneurs, the innovators, the small businesses. And when I was there, I passed 6 bills that were in favor of supporting small businesses, especially around here in the Elk Grove Industrial Park. So that's really where I'd focus.
Mr. Corrigan, 1 minute.
So the culture in Illinois right now, we're just not seeing it where it needs to be for our small business owners. Small business owners are leaving this state to cross the borders, and that's large in part due to the regulations that they face. Illinois small business owners have over 250,000 regulations placed upon them. In states like Missouri and Kentucky, it's half that, 125,000. We need to lower our tax rate. We need to get rid of some of these harmful regulations so that our small business owners will come back to this state, will want to grow in this state, and will want to hire employees for good paying jobs. A better economy for Illinois means better jobs, higher wages, and more revenue. This allows us to be able to fund these social programs that we all care about so much at the state level. This allows people to be able to make, it allows them to have more freedom with their money. So I think it's vastly important that we put our small businesses first and foremost. They are the lifeblood of our economy. They hire over 75% of people in this state.